Okay, so welcome everybody. Good morning. I'm standing here before you as you all are sleep deprived, so I will do my best to keep this interesting. As Pavel said, my name is Hannah Roberg, and yes, I'm very happy to be here. Nervous, very nervous, but happy to be here. I myself am not from Tumen, like he said, but I do call this place home. So I hope you enjoy your time in Tumen and then in Sochi. So as also Pavel said, today we are here on behalf of Creative Mornings and also all of our amazing organizers. Let's thank the organizers of this event. How many of you have heard of Creative Mornings before? One person? Okay, a few more, okay. I honestly had not heard of it myself, but as I did more research on Creative Mornings, I continued to get more and more nervous as I realized that this is actually a super cool program in so many different countries, talking about so many different topics. My conclusion is that it's actually like the baby of TED Talks, or maybe TED Talks 2.0. I don't know, whatever you want to call it, but realizing that did not help my stress for today, but we will continue on. So specifically, we are going to talk about the Creative Mornings' current global theme, which is Pioneer, which is why there's well, there was a buffalo on the screen. Okay, there is. As Creative Mornings states, pioneers shatter expectations, widen boundaries, and reveal new possibilities in life. So, no pressure. I'm already losing my spot. To me, a pioneer is someone who is bold, adventurous, determined. In the case of the U.S., I think of the American settlers that went west. I think of Martin Luther King. I think of the 3 NASA women that were the brains to get us to the moon, although Russia was first in space. And I also think of other women breaking glass ceilings. So, however, not all pioneers have to be famous or written about in history books. Pioneers can also be entrepreneurs, local social activists, etc. I see myself as a pioneer, or rather, as of yesterday, I saw myself as a pioneer in the way that I love to travel, and I love to go to different countries and experience new cultures and learn about new cultures. I'm sure many of you are in that same boat. So go ahead and shout out what you think are some maybe descriptions of a pioneer, or some examples that you can think of, or how you think you're a pioneer, just from the brief description I've given you already. Any ideas? Come on, wake up. Martin Luther King, like I said, yes, definitely. Very good pioneer. What are some other descriptions of a pioneer? Adjectives. Confident, maybe. What? Brave. Inspirational, innovative. Charismatic, that's a good one. Ambitious, that's a really good one. Motivated. Very good. So, you guys have a good idea already. How many of you, right now, before we start this presentation fully, see yourself as a pioneer? Raise your hand. A couple? Okay, well maybe by the end of the session, more of you will be raising your hand. All right, so we will also discuss what it means to be a pioneer later on in the session. But knowing that all of you are equally fantastic in your own ways, I hope I can entertain you with my story as a pioneer. As I started to plan this session, I was talking with my Fulbright supervisor, Pavel Kuznetsov, who you guys met, and he suggested that I talk about my experience abroad, especially what I love most about Russia and what I will miss when I go home. And I looked at him and I said, so you want me to talk about the biggest problem, the biggest issue in my life right now to a bunch of strangers? And he was like, yeah. He thought it was funny. I not so much. But nonetheless, that is what I'm going to talk about. So Pavel already introduced me a little bit, but I will just again say that my name is Hannah Roberg, and I'm from Wisconsin, in the state of Wisconsin in the United States, but went to school at Hamline University in Minnesota. I studied international relations and Russian and Spanish, which has brought me to Spain and Russia. And I, this past year, just completed the Fulbright program, which I love to talk about the Fulbright program because it's not only an opportunity for Americans to go abroad, but also foreigners to come to the United States. So all of you should look up the Fulbright program after this talk. But yes, and I think the Fulbright itself is actually a really good example of a pioneer. The Fulbright program was started many, many years ago in the United States as one of the first big international exchange programs. So the Fulbright in itself was a pioneer trying to get students to study abroad and to go to other countries, and for students to also come to the US. I don't think I'm actually really using the microphone. Can all of you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I have an annoyingly loud teacher voice, so we're good. So that's a little bit about me. I finished the Fulbright last year and have already returned to the US and decided to come back and visit because I already missed it too much, and also had the opportunity to be a part of this regional program and meet all of you, which is really exciting. So I guess with that, the pioneering program of the Fulbright led me to Russia, and it led me to be a pioneer in myself. Today, I want to talk about or focus on 7 lessons that I learned while in Russia specifically. So as I said, I've been abroad before, but I'm going to focus on my time in Russia. And these 7 points also correspond to what I love most about Russia and to what I will miss most when I return home to the United States on Tuesday. So if I don't cry by the end, I will consider it a success. But feel free to laugh at my jokes. It makes me feel better, so yeah. So these 7 unique characteristics of Russia have taught me how to be a better pioneer. And maybe you can learn something from them today as well, or maybe you can try them out while you're in Russia, or at least find them interesting. I have listed them in order, very roughly, of the last one being what I love and what I miss the most. And so I'll start with number 7. And just increase in the level of depression that I feel. So, without further ado, I will continue. Oh. I don't remember what this slide was about. I don't know. I'm in Russia. I love it. So, the first one that I want to talk about is Borscht and Russian sushi. I will admit that I initially didn't like borscht. Borscht is a very traditional Russian soup, right? I admit I didn't like it the first time I tried it. However, after 15 babushki insisted or rather forced me to try their borscht because their borscht is the best, I finally fell in love with borscht. As for Russian sushi, well, it's the only sushi that I like. I literally don't like sushi in any other country except Russia. Why is that? Unless you've already had sushi here in Russia, you're probably quite confused. Well, Russia embodied the concept of hybridization perfectly when taking the idea of sushi from the international stage and modifying it for Russian taste buds, which apparently I have. My favorite sushi is with cucumbers. My second favorite is with cooked chicken. Sushi, right? The point is, these are the little things, often food, at least for me, that creep into our hearts and show themselves when we least expect it. I often, for example, after a long day of work in the United States, I often find myself craving Russian sushi. In this situation, there is nothing that can satisfy my hunger in the United States, leaving me with a fresh feeling of missing Russia again. I should mention that these are the things that also result in our friends and family thinking we're crazy. I haven't quite figured out how to resolve that issue myself. My family still thinks I'm crazy. But I do think it is a great example of how we can adapt to and appreciate nuances in different cultures and countries. No country has it all. The United States does not have Russian sushi. So with that, every country has different nuances that we can understand and we can appreciate. The next the thing that I will miss most is tapachki. Some of you may already know about the Russian tradition of tapachki, but for those of you that don't, it is the very practical use of very comfortable slippers in your own home and the home of others. I personally love this tradition. I have adopted this tradition completely in my own life, faithfully wearing slippers since my first trip to Russia 8 years ago. However, as much as I love slippers, this tradition means so much more to me than that. Personally, I think it represents the comfort and the sacredness of a Russian home. Traditionally, Russians are very hospitable and giving people. They have a huge tradition of that. When you visit someone's home, you will not only be offered slippers, but 10 salads, 15 types of sandwiches and pastries, several desserts, coffee, black and green tea, wine, juice, and more. These are pictures of dinners that I've been invited to. As you can see, the table is loaded. You most certainly have to eat some, or rather a lot of everything, or else the babushki, or the babushki in training, will be very worried that you did not eat well. If your friend's mom saw you on the street not wearing warm enough clothes, she would literally give you her own coat to make sure that you stay warm. One time, I was walking down the street. It was my first month in Tumen, and I literally had a babushka come up and tapped me on the head. "Где твоя шапка?" And I didn't know what to do in that situation. I've never had a stranger tap my head and tell me that I'm going to be sick by the evening because I didn't wear a hat. But that just goes to show how everybody's looking out for you. If you're struggling to carry your grocery bags home, you will most certainly have someone offer their help, even if it's in the opposite direction that they need to go. I have only ever lived in Russia as a grown adult, yet I can confidently say that I have never been more cared for than in Russia. No offense to my real mom. Even having been to Russia several times, I am still always surprised at the incredible culture of hospitality. These customs are the gems within a culture that other countries and cultures can admire in order to better understand the people that embody them. My body has never felt colder in Siberia. As you can see in the coming picture, my eyelashes are literally frozen. But my heart has never felt warmer. Aww. Okay, next. So, the next one I want to talk about, number 5, that I will miss most about Russia, is the richness of the Russian language, or rather, bogatый язык, because I don't think in English I would ever say rich language, but in Russian you do. What do I mean by Russian being a rich language? I mean that for every word in English, there are 10 words in Russian. For meanings that we don't have a word for in English, there is a word for in Russian. After studying Russian for longer than I want to admit, based on my level, I often find myself in situations where I cannot find the right words in English. But instead, I can find the Russian variant very easily, and it's very appropriate. For example, the word variant is a great example of how Russian has creeped into my English. Before studying Russian, I never said the word variant, but now I use it all the time, because in Russian you use it all the time. I'm not going to lie, I have a love-hate relationship with the fact that Russian is a bogatый язык. On the one hand, it means that Russian is extremely difficult to learn. But on the other hand, it means there's always those moments when you learn a new word and you're like, oh, круто, cool. I've recently been especially interested in how languages change our perceptions of reality. For example, our perceptions of time, or overall what is going on around us. I have read a few articles, for example, from The Independent and other science journals, and they explain how depending on what language someone is thinking in, they refer to time differently. I find this very true for myself. When speaking English, I tend to be very exact. Tomorrow, 3 p.m. However, when I talk in Russian and in Spanish, I'm much vaguer, saying, soon, this weekend, tomorrow maybe. As someone who loves languages, I find this absolutely fascinating, that language can affect our perceptions of reality. I love that one language can have one word for a concept that another language doesn't have at all. I truly believe that languages are the bridges between countries and cultures, not only as a source of communication, but also as a source of understanding cultural situations within a country. When I was back in the United States in August and September, I noticed that I often use untranslatable words as proof as a cultural phenomenon. For example, explaining a political situation or a social issue in Russia, there's often a word that you can refer to that we don't have in English because we haven't had those situations happen in the United States. So, let's continue to study foreign languages. I think English is a second language for many of you, yes? Yeah. So, continue studying foreign languages in order to build bridges as not only a means of communicating, but also understanding one another. And if you're attempting to learn Russian like me, good luck with those 10 words that you only have one for in your own language. As I mentioned before, this is my 5th time in Russia, totaling a year and a half. I have somehow always been surrounded by people who constantly seem to be thinking big, searching for something new, and wanting to learn something different. Maybe Russians tend to have this admirable character trait because they have to read War and Peace in high school. But no matter the reason, I'm grateful for being surrounded by it. It has encouraged me to study new topics, research different ideas, and overall be creative. Oh, I forgot this slide. This is a great example of multiple languages in your head at one time. So, enjoy. Next slide. So, the big ideas. Where was I? So I'm grateful for being surrounded by these people with the big ideas. I will give you one example of when I was forced to reflect on what I am doing wrong in life. Last year, I was invited to present to a local high school here in Tumen. The presentation resulted in a long Q&A session of, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite color? What's your favorite that? What's your favorite that? Because I have so many interests, I personally hate this question because I can never say just one. But anyways, one student asked me who my favorite American author is. After listing a few authors like John Steinbeck and Stephanie Meyer, guilty, the student asked me if I liked a specific author. To this day, I don't know what he said. I asked him to repeat the name several times, praying that I would recognize the name. With no luck, after the third repetition, I was like, oh, yeah. The little 14-year-old boy went on to explain super academically why he loves this author, and I just continued to nod. Honestly, in the United States, it is sometimes too easy to go with the flow. We already have a lot of great nonprofit organizations and sport clubs that I can just sign up for. But Russia and the amazing people that I've been surrounded with have encouraged me not to settle, but rather to continue thinking big and being creative. I've recently accepted a new position in the United States that will be a perfect platform for creating new events, workshops, trips, and even international exchanges. And I could not be more excited and thankful for encountering that 14-year-old little boy and all of my other colleagues. There's no end or limit to developing. We are meant to create and progress. There is no better way than to do it together, by spreading motivation, sharing ideas, and creating ideas together. #globalization. Okay, as I get lower on the list, it's harder and harder for me to explain why I love it. So, we're already down to number 3. Maybe you're already like, oh, sweet, only 3 left. So, the value of history. When I included this in the presentation, my supervisor was like, what? But I promise I have a reason. Maybe it is because I'm an American and we only have a few centuries of history. But I have always been fascinated with Russian history. It's long, complex, profound, but most importantly, critical to understanding Russia and Russian people today. We could have a whole year of lectures about Russian history. So I will spare us all for now and just explain how important it is. Russians, more than any other country that I have encountered, are very knowledgeable about their history. That 14-year-old boy probably could tell me everything about World War II, for example. They value their history and understand its importance. As a foreigner, it is equally important to understand Russian history or a foreign country's history. Almost every question or issue, at least in my opinion, within Russia today can be explained by or at least refers to part of Russian history. I have always known the importance of understanding our history, but Russia has reinforced this idea for me. I have since been able to return to my own country and evaluate current issues, because we have a lot right now in the US, based on historical factors. It might be silly to say that I will miss the respect of history, but to me, it is one of the most important lessons in our life, to seek to understand why and how ideas and situations are formed, rather than just judge them from the beginning. Personally, I think Marcus Garvey's quote states this importance perfectly. A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. The second thing that I will miss most about Russia is Russian relationships and the loyalty that results from these relationships. I tried to write this slide in English, and I couldn't, because we don't have 4 words for levels of friendship in English. But in Russian, there is. Starting from an acquaintance, then like a good acquaintance, and then tovarish, like comrade, somebody that you do something with maybe, and then drug, friend, that is for life, okay? To get to this level takes a lot. But once you're there, friends don't come and go in Russia, I think in the nature of the language that represents that. In English, I use the term friend very loosely. I refer to a colleague as a friend that I only see at work, but still I call them friend, da-da-da-da-da. In Russia, it's very specific. Where are we in our relationship, and what does it mean? And I love this, because when you get to this level with a Russian, you can bet your bottom dollar that there is nothing in life that will break that friendship. The loyalty is extreme and something to definitely be admired. So the whole stereotype that Russians are cold people, well, okay, maybe they just don't think it's important to talk to strangers, because what you have in your heart is your real good friends. Those are the important ones that you're super close with. I am from Minnesota, and I like my bubble of space, but in Russia, that constantly gets popped by all my friends, but that's okay. So, last but not least, what I will miss most about Russia is the people. This point is by far what I will miss most, and I don't really have words to describe this. Some of the best relationships of my life have been here in Russia, with friends, colleagues, and even people that I now consider family. As we go through life, there are people that put stamps on our hearts. I have numerous stamps on my heart from Russia. There's nothing like having the opportunity to deeply get to know someone from the other side of the world. From the Midwest of the USA to Siberia, Russia, I have done just that. I know that I will always remember and have friends all over the world, and I think my life is richer because of it. This is where I was expecting the tears, so I'm doing good. Without further ado, I'm going to turn to some pictures that hopefully show what I cannot explain, the people of Russia. We're in Russia. Selfies are okay on a professional PowerPoint, right? So with that, I will conclude. Russia has taught me how to be a better pioneer. The Fulbright, a pioneer itself, gave me the opportunity to be here and to become a better pioneer. For me, personally, a pioneer is someone that, myself and I as a pioneer, is someone who travels and wants to experience the world around the whole world. I fell in love with Russia a long time ago and continue to come back. And I hope you can see how much I do love Russia and how much I miss it when I'm not here, and how these lessons that I have learned have made me a better pioneer. I've learned how to better understand a culture, whether it's through history or the extremely difficult language or whatever. There's different ways that you can really get to know a different culture and country. And as all of you are here today, coming from all sorts of countries, shout out your countries. I didn't hear any of them, but awesome! So you have the opportunity now to mingle with people from all over the world. And I hope that you can learn from each other and maybe figure out how you are a pioneer yourself. Because I'm sure all of you are, but just too humble to be aware of your abilities.